I work with a lot of watchable media on this channel and not too many video games. Like I said, a lot of watchable media on this channel, and because Poppy Playtime Chapter 3's release date continues to be the most mysterious thing about the game, I thought we'd probably get ahead of it and work with Poppy Playtime today. And when I put it up to a poll for all of you to decide what I should turn them into things as, you gave a lot of good suggestions. So let's mix things up with a chaos episode. Let's get started. Hello, and thank you all for coming. I am one of the head mech designers here at Iron Core Industries. As you are undoubtedly aware at this point, an ex-employee of our company snuck into the facility and compromised one of our mech suits. As head designer of this specific armor, I am here to give you the details of the events leading up to the suit's disappearance. I will leave time for questions once I've finished my account. Other than that, let's begin. The model in question was armor PP2312X, more commonly known as Sleepy Kitty. I said please hold questions till the end, but if you are going to ask about the name, that is, unfortunately, one of the things that is out of my control. I simply oversee the making of armors, while my superiors have the final say on their names. The suit's base design resembles that of a purple humanoid cat, complete with clawed hands, ears, and even a tail. The main focus of the armor was to emit large amounts of gas to cover a wide area. The hands and tail are both equipped with nozzles that can expel said gas, which is held in a canister on the suit's back. There was not one specific usage that we had in mind when designing this armor, rather we brainstormed several instances where this suit could come in handy. For example, firefighters could fill the tank with a dry foam and use the suit to put out massive fires. But, as I've mentioned before, my job is to only oversee the making of the mech armors, while my supervisors have the final say in their name and function before they go to market. Those in charge felt the armor was better suited for combat, and as such had a team of us here develop a somniferous agent, or a gas that can induce sleepiness into people. The idea behind this was when the gas was deployed into a room, any living being would be rendered unconscious instantly, allowing armed forces to enter an area without resistance. Getting back to the matter at hand, the Sleepy Kitty was stolen 2 nights ago. The perpetrator had snuck into the building's laboratory under the veil of night, using a mech armor that previously went missing some time ago. Once again, please hold your questions till the end. Though, yes, we have realized that our security is a bit lackluster. We've taken precautions to ensure that future measures are up to date. Now, this idea to work with Poppy Playtime actually was a suggestion that came from a fellow artist, Dempsey J Illustrations, who I'll link in the description below. And I really like this idea, but I was really stuck on what I can turn them into, because I didn't know which characters I wanted to use. I didn't know what would be, like, if I wanted to do an overarching story like the Amazing Venomized Circus or individual ones. And so I put it up to a poll for all of you, and you all said a bunch of different things. One of the options was a variety episode, and that's what wound up winning. And you all gave a lot of really good suggestions of what to use them for. And one of the comments was to turn them into mech armors or fantasy armors. I went with mech here. And when I saw that, I decided that this entire episode was going to be turning Poppy Playtime villains into things I haven't worked with before. Mostly. That'll make sense in the next drawing. I knew for this one that mech armors had to be very geometric in shape almost, or like highly detailed. So I knew I had to either go in really well with the detail in the line art phase or really into it in the rendering phase to get that metallic mech kind of thing across. I don't know how else to say it. And once I finished the flattening stage, I really liked how it turned out. I thought the feet were a bit lacking and probably couldn't fit an actual person's feet, but overall I really liked it. And then I took a break to like eat lunch or something and came back and did the smoke, and that brought the piece from like an 8 to like a 16. I was really worried that I wasn't going to be able to get the flow of the smoke, like coming out of the nozzle on the hand and the tail and then dispersing into the room to fill up like the frame. But it was actually a lot easier than I expected. And even with the current rendering style that I'm doing, which I'll explain more in the next image, it came out looking so good, and I love it so much. And then I did the rendering on the metallic armor, and it was just absolutely wonderful. But let's take a look at PP2312X, or the Sleepy Kitty. These names are all just absolutely ridiculous. Marie Payne stood outside her orphanage as the orange glow lit up the night. There was nothing she could have done. No, that wasn't true. She could have prevented all of this if she wasn't so afraid of being disliked by the children. Marie used to run an orphanage for young children who exhibited supernatural abilities. It was one of many all across the country, with the goal of teaching children how to handle their powers in order to use them to benefit society and help others. It was a solid plan. All the kids loved Marie for being an easygoing caretaker, but with dozens of children running around all with out-of-control powers, the orphanage was constantly in complete chaos. Windows would get broken nearly every other day, rooms would either be flooded or scorched, or sometimes even both at the same time. Marie did her best to keep everything in order, but while still remaining on the children's good side. One night, one of the kids' fire powers grew far too hot to handle, and she wound up starting a fire in a room that spread throughout the rest of the house quickly. With zero experience with their powers or basic emergency protocol, only Marie was able to make it out, despite her best efforts to help the children. Something inside Marie snapped that night. She saw how the whole situation could have been avoided if she had just fulfilled her responsibilities to train the children instead of constantly wanting to be cherished by them. She swore that she would never make the same mistake again, that she would take her purpose more seriously. Marie rebuilt the orphanage with her ability to stretch her limbs and lived alone in it for years to come. If any soul was unfortunate enough to wander across the home, they would soon find themselves in a testing chamber with Marie, who now referred to herself as Mother, hanging over them from the ceiling, watching them. She would put the person through rigorous tests and trials, all in the name of making them more prepared for the future. When I was coming up with characters to work with from Poppy's Playtime, I figured since I already had ideas to use CatNap and Huggy Wuggy, that I might as well just stick to the villains of each chapter. That being said, I faintly remembered Pop Cross turned Mommy Longlegs into a superhero, I believe it was, and to avoid copying, even subconsciously, I did my best to avoid looking at that video from him. I was also really focused on having the pose of Mommy Longlegs holding an arm from the grab pack, like when she rips it off of the player in her chapter of Poppy Playtime, leaving them with only one hand. And I really wanted that to be part of the pose, even though it might not have made sense story-wise. But after that, I just didn't know what to do. Like, I turned her, like, character design into clothing and just kind of gave her, like, I guess it would be like called a corset of her torso, and then like an underlying skin tight suit, just so it wasn't all skin and I kept that pink in there. But then, like, that was it. It was just the gloves and the boots and the leotard, maybe, whatever it's called. It would be that and then just a few other things. And that was it. So I did wind up actually going back to Popcross's studio just to see what he did, and then not taking any of that into account and just sticking with the base design I had. So that was basically a waste of time. And because of all that, I will say that it is definitely the weakest design out of the three. Like, I don't hate it by any means. In fact, I think it came out really nice. Just in terms of design, there's not much extra to it. It's a very base design. And honestly, I'm okay with that because the drawing came out great, especially with the rendering. But just like, maybe a little more detail would have brought it from like an 8 to a 10 or whatever. As you've seen from my last design notes on CatNap, my numbering system doesn't mean anything. On the other hand, though, if you've noticed, I've been trying out a new rendering style within the drawings. Instead of just going in with an airbrush on a couple of shadow and highlight layers, I'm now roughly blocking in where all the shadows and highlights would go with a hard brush, and then going back over them and blending them with an airbrush with a pressure sensitive opacity. So the harder I press, the more solid the stroke is. And that's actually been really helpful. It's really good in that initial sketching phase that I do to just block out the construction, and it's really good to just get that, well, yeah, that blending in there. So I really like how it's going back. Once I'm done with all of that, I also go in with an extra shadow layer and a airbrush and just go over the entire piece of all the places that are not being hit by the light. And then I'll do the same thing with a highlight layer for all the places closest to the light source, just to add that little bit more of 3D to the thing overall. And with that being said, let's take a look at Mommy Longlegs as a test-obsessed supervillain. Hey, me again. Come here, I got something to tell you. Closer. Closer. We got a Discord now. That's right, I've been working with my friend for the past couple of whatevers to create a space for the community to A, celebrate 500 subscribers, and just to have a place where we can chat and share art and, coming soon, hopefully, submit for community redraws. Still working out the logistics of that one, but hopefully in the new year. But if that sounds like a place that interests you, there will be a link to it down in the description below. And I'm going to do my best to make sure the link doesn't expire, but if I fail to do that and it doesn't work in the future, let me know in the comments and I will do my best to fix it. And with one little reminder to like the video and subscribe to the channel, let's get into the next drawing. Woo!
Dad, can you read me a bedtime story before I go to sleep?
Sure thing, kiddo. You want fantasy or sci-fi?
Fantasy!
All right. Once upon a time, in a faraway land named PlayCaria, ruled a king named Ludin. King Ludin tried his best to maintain peace within his kingdom, but he could only do so much against the outside forces. Like any good ruler, King Ludin employed an army of knights to defend his subjects. The knights were well trained in combat, but not well enough to take on every enemy. As a result, King Ludin had some guards taken to a powerful wizard on the edge of PlayCaria, named Hurley the Saw. Ludin wanted his knights to be more physically powerful, nigh unstoppable. He wanted to turn them into beasts. The wizard cast his spell on several of the king's knights and turned them into monstrous creatures. One of them could stretch their limbs to wrap up enemies. Another one could breathe gas to make people sleepy. But one of them was so strong that he had the strength of 1,000 men. All the monsters served King Ludin with undying loyalty, as Hurley the Saw made more and more beast for the king. Until one day, King Ludin sent the wrong guard to be transformed. Somehow this guard was able to hold on to all his memories during the conversion process and remembered all the terrible things that Hurley and King Ludin made him go through. The things that they made all the guards go through. The final beast pretended to follow the king's orders to protect the kingdom, but in secret he was making a plan with all the other creatures the wizard made to take revenge on King Ludin for turning them into something horrible. After years of keeping PlayCaria safe from outside threats, King Ludin's monsters attacked his castle, killing him and everyone else inside.
Dad, I don't like this story. It's too scary. Can you read me a different one, please? Dad?
Turning Huggy Wuggy into a more monstrous beast was the first of the three that he did, and there's something about the way I sketched him out in my sketchbook that for some reason I liked a little more than how the final product came out. Now, once again, don't get me wrong, I do not hate it by any means. For a fully rendered beast and background, it came out very good. I'm just not in love with the pose because Huggy Wuggy doesn't really have much to his design outside of the facial area with the lips and the teeth and the eyes and the whatever. The rest of it is just a body of fur. But I just feel like I could have included more body just to give a little more meat to this drawing, because it's really just head, arm, leg, that's it. Though, thinking back, Huggy Wuggy is a very tall and lanky character, so maybe that was the right call, because you can get a sense of this creature is very almost malnourished, like very thin. Like it is big and scary, but in terms of like body mass, it doesn't take up a lot of space lengthwise, I guess, or widthwise, whatever you want to call it. So I think maybe this was the right call, and going back to it, like looking at this to write up the design notes, I do like how it turned out. And the thing I was most concerned about this piece was rendering the fur, because when I did my horror icons as dogs video, the way of rendering fur I had then was individually drawing each strand of hair, albeit at a much faster rate, but still, it was very time consuming and didn't look great. So I wound up watching a lot of tutorials on how to render fur, and I think I have a process that I'm pretty happy with, and I'm actually very excited to develop it more further down the line. But what I'll do is I've taken a square brush and I'm just blocking in the basic highlights and shadows. So if for the creature's arm, I'll roughly block out the highlights on the top and the shadows on the bottom, not even putting full pressure onto the pen. And then I'll go in with the airbrush that I usually use for shading, and with another highlight layer, draw in tufts of hair every so often to give the illusion of like overlapping fur. So like, oh, here's one thing of fur, and now here's another one, and that ends here, and then the other one goes under it. And then to further that depth even more, I'll take another shadow layer under that highlight layer, same brush, same airbrush, and just paint slight shadows underneath those tufts. And it wound up looking really good, and I'm very happy with it. And the background too, just everything about this came out really good, especially unintentionally hitting that lanky design. So let's take a look at our final drawing of the episode, the Hungarian Longarm. Also, the name is absolutely ridiculous, and I love it. And there we have it. Poppy Playtime villains as mech armors, monsters, and superhero villain things. I'm really happy with this one, especially for a first attempt at a mech armor and something more monstrous. I think it turned out really well, especially for rendering. I want to say thank you to everyone who voted to make this a variety episode. Really turned out really good. And specifically to those who commented on what I should turn them to, because I think at least 2 of the 3 of these were comment suggestions. I know the mech armor and the beast definitely were. I would have to go back and check if the superhero villain one was also a suggestion, although I think it was. So Thank you to everyone for these suggestions. I think they all came out absolutely incredible, and I hope you do too. Thank you all so much for watching. If you had fun with this episode, feel free to hit the like and subscribe button. It is recommended you do by 9 out of 10 YouTube artists. The 10th one we just couldn't get a hold of, but I'll fill in for him and say it's really good if you hit the like and subscribe button. And that's all I've got for you today. If you want more from me, I highly recommend Five Nights at Venom's, which is another indie horror-based episode, taking Five Nights at Freddy's animatronics and turning them into Venom, especially since the new VR game's coming out like next week, or later this week actually, so maybe that's something we'll tackle soon. It is. My name is KyngPin Creations. As I mentioned before, the Discord link will be down in the description, and I will see you all in the next video next week for Five Nights at Venom's Part 2. Take care, everybody.